behalf of St. Martin, the entire team at the St. Martin Tourism Bureau, I extend a warm welcome to each of you. We are honored to host you this evening for the welcome reception of the 49th Annual Conference of the Caribbean Studies here in our vibrant island of St. Martin. St. Martin, with its rich tapestry of cultures, histories, and tradition, stand as a testament to the resilience and diversity that define the Caribbean. Our island's unique blend of heritage, coupled with influences from across the Caribbean and beyond, offers a living laboratory for the themes you will explore during this conference. Bridging Caribbean studies and Caribbean tourism is vital for fostering a deeper understanding of our region's rich culture, historical and social political landscapes, while enhancing the visitor's experience in a way that benefits local communities. Caribbean studies provide the academic framework and critical analysis needed to preserve the diverse identities, histories, and voices of the region, and ensuring that tourism development is not only economically driven, but also socially and culturally responsible. Tourism is the lifeblood of most of the Caribbean region's economy, and we recognize the profound responsibility that comes with it. I believe as a Caribbean region, we are committed to promoting sustainable tourism that not only showcases our natural beauty, but also honors and preserves our cultural heritage. Our Caribbean region initiatives focus on community-based tourism, heritage conservation, and environmental stewardship, ensuring that the business benefits of tourism are equitable, shared, and that our cultural and natural resources are protected for future generations. Thank you. Great. The insights and discussions that will emerge from this conference are invaluable to the entire Caribbean ongoing efforts. Your multidisciplinary perspectives will help also St. Martin to understand better the complexities of our shared histories and to chart a course toward a more inclusive and sustainable future in tourism. As you engage in the sessions, workshops, and culture events planned for this week, I encourage you to immerse yourselves fully in the experience that St. Martin has to offer. Visit our historic sites, engage with our local communities, and savor the flavors of our diverse culinary traditions, as we are known as the culinary capital of the Caribbean. Let the rhythms of our music, which you heard big today, and the warmth of our people enrich your stay. I express my deepest gratitude to Dr. Rhoda Arundel and the Caribbean Studies Association for choosing St. Martin as the venue for this significant gathering. Okay. May this conference be a catalyst for meaningful dialogue, collaboration, and action that will resonate far beyond our shores. Welcome to St. Martin. Thank you. To the Caribbean Studies Association family, thank you for the opportunity for this year to be able to serve you from this seat of the presidency. It was my pride and joy and also honor to pick our homeland St. Martin as this year's venue. And we hope, as Cindy said, after you had a taste of the most beautiful island in the world, that it won't be too long before you choose St. Martin again as your conference. We're going to be interacting and talking along the day, so I'm not going to be long tonight. But I do want to express my heartfelt thank you to the ministers, both Minister of Education, Culture, and Youth and Sports, Minister Gums, and Minister Heidegger Martin. Can't call her Grisha for a while. I just have to call her Minister right now. And the Honorable, I can't call him Lulu. I have to say Mr. President Mussington for a while. But I want to say this because not only are they good friends, they are good believers in the product that is St. Martin. And not one of them hesitated when I went to them and say, we need your help. to host the best ever Caribbean Studies Conference. And they all came on board. And to His Excellency, the First Excellency Ajamo Bailey, I can't call him Mr. Cool and Joyce Boy anymore. I have to say Mr. His Excellency for a while. But the other Excellency will see David Commission. I'm still calling him Mr. David Commission because that's how we respect our elders around here. But we're also family, and really we're friends. In St. Martin, we are really friends. Sometimes we argue politically, but at the end of the day, we are one family. And as I was saying, I want to end by thanking the two teams that put this conference on. Team one, my executive committee. Stick your hand up wherever you are, because yeah, put your hands up so people can see you. There you are, there. My honorary board of elders, my advisors, put your hands up. Where are the others? Mr. St. Bernard, put your hand up. Dr. St. Bernard, put your hand. Where he is? He's somewhere around here. And go there he is in the back. Okay, and my local organizing committee members, put your hand up so people can see you. And the two teams came together as one team on one mission, which is to give you the best ever Caribbean Studies Association conference. We'll talk a little bit throughout the week, and at the end, we're going to break down, as we say, in a typical St. Martin style. So I'll see you at the end of the conference where we'll say a lot more. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is just the beginning.
Thank you, CSA, for choosing St. Martin. Thank you, Dr. Rhoda Arundel, for bringing home the conference. And thank you for working with the St. Martin Book Fair. I think this is the first conference that has a book fair with it, right? Yes. In 49 years. So we do things different in St. Martin. Let me use this opportunity to say these few words. I see this conference at the level of the first Pan-African conference that the great Trinidadian Sylvester William organized back in 1900. The reason why I made a comparison is that in the 1900s, only 2 states in Africa was liberated, Liberia and Ethiopia. All the others came after the conference. We are still a colony. We are still smelling the foul of colonialism in your land at the airport. And this conference, I know, could make a difference. And I'm sure my friend and comrade David is going to say that tonight and put a trademark in place that we could follow to become a republic as Barbados has done. This to us is very important. And we really count on you as scholars for us to discuss the issues that are important for us to advance and build a true Caribbean civilization. No issue is off of the table. We will discuss them all, starting tomorrow morning until Friday evening. And when we get enough of that, we're going to join in with the book fair on Saturday and have a number of workshops and panel discussion at the University of St. Martin so we could continue. And when we finish, our leadership would understand that Caribbean people should be able to travel within the Caribbean. Caribbean people should not have to have a visa to enter in no Caribbean country. You cannot be a foreigner in the Caribbean if you are from the Caribbean. And that's what this whole week of discussion should be about. The product. Caribbean people are tourists too in the Caribbean. Let's stop treating 380-something delegates from CSA as if they're not one. We thank you for choosing us. And we know that what's going to happen this weekend or this whole week is going to make a difference. In the next 50 years from now, just like how we read about Sylvester 100 years ago, when we read about St. Martin 50 years from now, what CSA and the St. Martin Book Fair has done that wouldn't have made a difference. We're not going to see the value of it now because we are part of it. But the next generation who's going to research this, going to say those people had vision. Like how we say about Marcus Garvey, who was before his time. I'm not before my time. I'm at the right time to do the right work to help liberate St. Martin. Thank you very much. Enjoy your stay in St. Martin. Have some fun, and let's have some fruitful discussion for the whole entire week.
On behalf of the Government of St. Martin, it is my distinct honor to welcome you to the 49th Annual Caribbean Studies Association Conference right here in this vibrant, resilient Swahili land. This year's theme, Reparations, Resistance, Resilience, Reproduction, and Rehabilitation, is not only timely, but deeply personal to us as a region still navigating the shadows of colonialism, slavery, and systemic inequality. When Dr. Rhoda Arundel came to me and asked for my support, and yes, kind of watched my speech, I didn't hesitate for a second. It is true. I said yes immediately. Why? Because I saw in her eyes, which I always have for many years, and heard in her voice the same fire that drives my own purpose, the fierce urgency to reclaim our story. Supporting this conference wasn't political for me. It was a personal commitment. And as a former member of parliament, I stood on global stages and even petitioned the UN to speak about the unfinished decolonization of our islands. I did so for recognition, but not for recognition, but for justice. I knew then, as I know now, that we must not wait for others to give us permission to heal, to build, or to thrive. We must lead with charge ourselves. Now, as Minister of TIAT, I see the direct connection between cultural empowerment, academic engagement, and sustainable development. Conferences like this are not just intellectual gathering. They are economic engines, platforms for exchange, and catalysts for collective consciousness. Your presence here is more than just symbolic. It is strategic, and it is necessary. As you engage in your panels, share your research, and walk our streets, Front Street and Back Street, and the boardwalk, I would like to welcome you and just hope that you immerse yourself in our friendliness, in our friendly island, and just indulge in who we are as a people. But let me close this speech by just one African proverb that I hold close to my heart, especially on this occasion. Until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero. Let us, the lions of this Caribbean soil, tell our stories boldly, truthfully, and powerfully, starting with here and now, right here, this beautiful island, again, St. Martin. Welcome again to my island. May your time be enriching, empowering, and unforgettable. Thank you.
Welcome to the Association of Caribbean Studies 49th Conference, and welcome to St. Martin, our sweet Swaliga. I am very proud that this Association of Caribbean Studies Conference is being held for the first time in St. Martin, and I am going to be privileged to attend, participate, and witness such a brilliant event. It is wonderful to be in this country which has such a rich cultural heritage and diversity. St. Martin offers the right environment for us to share our ideas on the conference theme: reparations, resistance, resilience, reproduction, and rehabilitation. We will gather here surrounded by heritage to discuss important issues regarding the territories of our region and to work together in creating a more suitable future. In this my capacity as President of the Collectivité D'Outre-mer of St. Martin, the Overseas Committee of St. Martin, I would like to encourage all attendees to fully embrace the theme with the objective of influencing the agendas of our communities, region, institutions, companies, governments, and international bodies that deal with the world we live in, thus creating not only our future, but a better world. Whatever the economic, social, or political condition, we, the people of the Caribbean, must always seek to take an active role in defining our delivering equitable access to the resources that provide information for all, lead us to knowledge, and improve the quality of community and individual life. I look forward to further discussions on this year's conference theme in St. Martin. On behalf of the collectivity of St. Martin, I welcome all to the Association of Caribbean Studies 49 Conference here in St. Martin. But before I go any further, I just want to say that I had the privilege and the honor to take part in a conference of such nature a few years back in Havana, Cuba. I went there with my family and friends so that we can be part of this great experience. And I must admit, or I must confess, that during the 3 or 4 days of events, I was involved in some great, wonderful, and very inspiring debate on various themes. Themes such as climate change or global warming and their devastating effects or consequences on the Caribbean as a whole. We also discussed politics or democracy in the Caribbean, and not to forget the fact that we also discussed the issue of language policies, setting language policies in the Caribbean, serving as a bridge of communication between the people of the region. And that's where the issue of bilingual or multilingual education became high on the agenda during those days of extended different discussions. And what I must say is that I came into contact with various, well, I would say, comrades from the region who was eagerly awaiting the wonderful opportunity to express with such enthusiasm, with such dignity and sense of pride, the knowledge on the subject that they master best. And again, it's put the conference at such a high level that I'm here this evening hoping, nourished by the same hope, that as of tomorrow morning, this same warm atmosphere will dominate the event, and you will get this return from the people, at least those who will have their papers to present, who will have to make commentaries on various subjects related to Caribbean integration, Caribbean unity, and of course, the idea of moving forward, having the understanding that it is in our best interest to continue to work as a Caribbean nation, fostering stronger unity and cooperation, irrespective of what the government of France or the government of Holland may think. We on St. Martin to move forward with the full support, the full backing of our Caribbean brothers and sisters, with the full support also of those arriving from the US, they too lending their support to help build this Caribbean nation. So on that note, I say thank you, may God bless you, and long live this Caribbean Association Conference. May God bless you.
When Rhoda asked me about doing this address, I said yes, and then I had to think of a topic, and truth be told, the topic kind of chose me because I want to speak about something that is on my mind, right now, something that should be on the minds of all thinking, sentient beings on our planet, and something that sheds a light on our reparations movement. Of course, I am speaking about the currently ongoing genocide in Gaza and the West Bank. So now, how many deaths do we have today? Means it's 65,000. We don't really know. We don't really know. A year ago, Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley described it as the world's first televised genocide. And all of us, we see those painful images on our television screens. Children, women, innocent, being slaughtered. And we condemn Israel and the Israeli Defense Force. We see snipers shooting Palestinian children in their heads. But we also see the big powers of this world, the United States, the UK, Germany, various European countries, facilitating it, sending weapons and bombs to Israel. And we look on and we can't understand it. How is this possible? How could that level of barbarity be so transparently inflicted? And no one says this is wrong, stop. No one with real power. And the reality, we say, these are brown people, these Palestinians. And the realization begins to come home to us that in the eyes of these European elites, these brown lives don't really matter. And it's a harsh realization. But then it says to us, well, if for them, brown lives don't really matter, how do they feel about black lives? Do black lives really matter in their eyes? And the Western media basically ignores the genocide while simultaneously portraying the Palestinians as terrorists. So, and you hear, for example, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who has stated in numerous speeches that Israel is fighting, and I'm quoting him, not only its war, but humanity's war against the barbarians. So we hear terms like terrorists, barbarians. Similarly, Israel's president, Isaac Herzog, he claimed that Israel's war on Gaza port is intended to save Western civilization, end of quote. Well, the German president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, she declaimed, and I quote her, "It is an ancient evil which reminds us of the darkest past and shocks all of us to the core." So this characterization of Palestinians as something dark, terrorists, barbarians, and really and truly what is being expressed here is something called the ideology of Orientalism, opposite of the West. It is an essentialist ideology rooted in philosophical idealism and in Hegelian notions that people's destinies are determined by their eternal cultures and religions. And of course, central to this philosophy is the idea that there is a hierarchy of cultures and religions, with, of course, European or Western cultures and religions at the very top of that hierarchy, and Black and brown, African and Asian cultures and religions at the bottom. And so what is the root of this ideology? Well, as European powers intervened, invaded, dominated, and enslaved the Caribbean and the Americas, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East between the 16th and 19th centuries, European scholars, philosophers, and assorted European propagandists developed discourses and narratives that portrayed these regions and the peoples who inhabited them as congenitally barbaric and naturally inferior to Europe and Europeans. These discourses and narratives centered around the concept of the so-called West, so-called European civilization, and purported to place the West at the very center of human civilization. To hear them tell it, the West was inherently associated with such values as reason, progress, freedom, and justice. And the rest of the world outside of the West was variously characterized by how far they deemed it to be removed from the West and its supposed values. So the rest of us were designated with such allegedly non-European values as superstition, despotism, and irrationalism. The logic of this opposition goes all the way down to the most fundamental aspects of human identity and can be found in the West's so-called high culture. Its most celebrated novels, poetry, and philosophy. White Europeans are associated with all these positive values, while non-Europeans are associated with these negative values. And brothers and sisters, you know, during those centuries of enslavement, this was the notion that was pushed. The propagandists of Europe maintained that they were doing Africans a favor by enslaving them, by bringing them from that dark continent. European philosophers, for example, philosophers like David Hume, to give one example, just one example, was of the opinion that the African was naturally inferior to the white man. In his essay on national characters in 1754, he wrote, and I quote, "There scarcely ever was a civilized nation of that black complexion, not even an individual, eminent either in action or speculation. No ingenious manufacturers among them, no art, no sciences." And not to be outdone, Benjamin Franklin in 1751, the American statesman, he said, "Why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America, where we have so fair an opportunity by excluding all blacks and tawnies of increasing the lovely white and red." And so it went on. And I really don't want to overstate the case for it. I give you one other example. Arthur de Gobineau, in his The Inequality of Human Races, I quote him. He says, "Such is the lesson of history. It shows us that all civilization derives from the white race, that none can exist without its help, and that a society is great and brilliant only so far as it preserves the blood of the noble group that created it. No Negro race is seen as the initiator of a civilization. And so that was the dominant narrative. But I don't want to overstate the case, because obviously there were Europeans who opposed slavery, who were capable of recognizing the humanity of Black and African people. There were people like Adam Smith, John Wesley, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Samuel Johnson, Tom Paine, Voltaire. But even though they were capable of recognizing the evil of slavery and recognizing humanity of Black or African people, even they subscribed to that notion of the West as center, the pinnacle, and the rest of us lesser than. Of course, we know it is a lie, because we know these great civilizations of Africa, Kemet, and Nubia, and Songhai, and all of the rest. But it was a notion that was extremely strong, and obviously still is strong today. And in fact, I want to share with you, and it is a notion that infected Black people themselves. And I want to share with you, because this is an association of Caribbean studies, I want to share with you two texts that make this point very, very strongly. One text is taken from George Lamming's In the Castle of My Sin, that very famous Caribbean novel. And I want to share with you a little passage from the book where the boys, the boys are at school, and the boys are discussing slavery right at school. And I'm quoting from the book now. One boy says, "I know what it is," one boy was saying. "They were all slaves, and they made us slaves too." They were talking about whether slavery had ever existed in Barbados, and the role of the British Queen. He said, "The Queen freed some of us because she made us feel that the empire was bigger than the garden." Of course, he's talking about the Garden of Eden. The Queen did free some of us in a kind of way. We started to think about the empire more than we thought of the garden. And then nothing mattered but the empire. But they have put the two of them together now, the empire and the garden. We are to speak of them the same way. They belong to the same person. They belong to God. The garden is God's own garden, and the empire is God's only empire. They work together for us. God save the King who will help us to see the garden again. We are slaves. We are still slaves to these two, the empire and the garden. And we are happy to be slaves. My mother, who is a Sunday school teacher, has explained it well. There is nothing for us to do, she tells me, but rejoice in our bondage. We are all going to the garden again, free again, and especially those who here on earth belonged to the empire. We will all be free again. The others will perish. So what Lamming was describing here, this was a scene from the 1930s. He was describing the extent to which that propaganda of the British Empire, the West, became conflated even with the idea of heaven. So the garden, heaven, and the empire were the same. That was the impact of that type of ideology even on Black people. And I will now want to share with you an extract from a speech made in 2022 by Mr. Joseph Borrell. Mr. Joseph Borrell in 2022 was the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security and Vice President of the European Union Commission. This was he's retired since 2022, but he was the director, the guru of European Union foreign policy, and he was making a speech, opening remarks at a ceremony in Europe, and these were his remarks, and I'm going to quote him. He says, "Thank you to all of you, and congratulations to all of you." This is he speaking in Europe, huh? "Congratulations to all of you for having the extraordinary chance of studying here in Bruges at the College of Europe. I am sure you are aware of how lucky you are. Here, Bruges, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Bruges is a good example of the European garden. Yes, Europe is a garden. We have built a garden. Everything works. It is the best combination of political freedom, economic prosperity, and social cohesion that humankind has been able to build. The three things together. And here, Bruges is maybe a good representation of beautiful things, intellectual life, well-being. The rest of the world, and you know this very well, is not exactly a garden. Most of the rest of the world is a jungle, and the jungle could invade the garden. The gardeners should take care of it, but they will not protect the garden by building walls. A nice small garden surrounded by high walls in order to prevent the jungle from coming in is not going to be a solution, because the jungle has a strong growth capacity, and the wall will never be high enough in order to protect the garden. The gardeners have to go to the jungle. Europeans have to be much more engaged with the rest of the world. Otherwise, the rest of the world will invade us by different ways and means." End of quote. That's the head, that's the man who was in charge of European Union foreign policy up to a year or two ago. And that was his concept of the world. Europe is the garden, and the rest of the world outside of Europe is the jungle. So, brothers and sisters, this is what we are dealing with, and it has implications for our reparations struggle, because that is the ideology that we are up against, an ideology that still, even in 2025, does not recognize the humanity of non-European people. In May, on the 14th of May, Barbados commemorated this 400th anniversary of the first European landing in Barbados. And I published this little booklet, What to the Republic of Barbados does the 14th of May, 1625 mean? And in this booklet, I am looking at that whole project that started. And as part of the analysis, I look at a unique Barbadian contribution to this notion of white superiority and Black dehumanization. And when I say a Barbadian contribution, I'm not speaking about Black Barbadians. I'm speaking about the original ruling elite of Barbados, the white slave master class. Just I want to give you a little sense of this. So, Barbados they land in 1625. They settle Barbados. They establish the sugar plantation economy that requires large numbers of enslaved Africans. So they establish this very productive society, slave plantation society. They establish a local Barbadian House of Assembly in 1639 that makes laws for Barbados. Those laws are then passed up to the UK, and they have a problem. They have a problem because slavery was abolished in England in the 12th century. What? Slavery was illegal in England as far back as the 12th century. But they had established this slave society, and they had to find a way to legalize that system of slavery. And it wasn't so urgent in the initial stages, but it began to become urgent when, by 1660, the enslaved portion of the population started to outstrip the white portion of the population. And they said, look, we have to put some serious legislation in place to deal with this slave thing. And so they passed these acts of parliament. The first one, the famous Barbadian Slavery Code, the 1661 Act for the Better Ordering and Governing of Negroes. And in the years after that, they began to refine this legislation until in 1688 they passed the Act the 1688, the Act for the Governing of Negroes. And to cut a long story short, basically what they did, because in England, it was a crime to kidnap a human being, to enslave a human being, to rape a human being, to mutilate a human being. All of these were crimes. So they came up with this brilliant idea. The way in which we can get around having the English legal system apply in Barbados is to designate these Africans as non-humans. And if we designate them as non-humans, then we can make the case that the system of law that exists in England that applies to human beings does not apply to them, and we, the Barbados House of Assembly, we are at liberty to design a totally new legal regime to apply to these creatures who are not human beings. So I'll try to make it simple I'll just read the preamble to the 1688 Act for the Governing of Negroes, so you get a sense of how they did this. This is what the preamble says. Whereas the plantations and estates of this island cannot be fully managed and brought into use without the labor and service of great numbers of Negroes and other slaves. And for as much as the said Negroes and other slaves brought unto the people of this island for that purpose are of barbarous, wild, and savage natures, and such renders them wholly unqualified to be governed by the laws, customs, and practices of our nations. In other words, of the UK. It therefore becomes absolutely necessary that such other constitutions, laws, and orders should be in this island framed and enacted for the good regulating and ordering of them, as may restrain the disorders, rapes, and inhumanities to which they are naturally prone and inclined. End of quote. So that was the basics, the jurisprudential, the philosophical basis for creating the slavery regime which was totally different from the legal regime in England, was that these were wild, savage, barbarous creatures who were naturally prone to rapes and disorders and inhumanities. And so they put this legislation together, they passed it, they sent it up to England, the English monarchy approved it. They then, having established it in Barbados, they then took it to Jamaica, St. Kitts, Antigua, all across the British West Indian colonies, and then they took it to South Carolina, and it went all across the 13 colonies of North America. And that is how that system in legislation was constructed. And the fundamental idea is that Africans are not human. So this is an ideology that we have been fighting for centuries now, this evil ideology. And you know, I don't know about you all, but in 2020, when there was that public lynching of George Floyd, and that public lynching of George Floyd sparked an upsurge in Black Lives Matter activism, not just all across the United States, but all across the world. I must confess, I felt and I said publicly, look, the world has turned a corner. The world has turned a corner. There's no going back. The people of the world have, in fact, come to an understanding that Black lives do matter, that this anti-Black prejudice and discrimination is evil, and we are going to progress from here onwards. Did you all feel the same way? I felt so. I saw masses of, I saw people on the streets in cities all over the world raising the banner that Black Lives Matter. And I said, you know, we have broken the back of this. We have finally, that 8 minutes, that televised 8 minutes of that public lynching shown on television screens all across the world, I felt that it had done its job, and that we were going to go forward. And then, to my utter disappointment, you began to see the push. Yeah. You know, the rise of fascist parties and regimes in Europe, the rise of Make America White Again in the United States. And it has been very, we now have to face the reality. And now we see Gaza. And we see that brown lives don't matter. And if brown lives don't matter, what is the implication for Black lives? And so, you know, this is something that we're going to have to deal with in the reparations movement. Because, you know, when we engaged with the British on reparations, you know what they tell us? They said this to us back in 2001 at United Nations World Conference Against Racism, not just the British, the European Union. When we raised the issue of reparations back then with them, they said, you know, we don't owe you reparations. Why don't you owe us? Well, because slavery, when it was practiced, was illegal. That's what they said. And they still say it today, that the reason they don't, because they concede, you know. These great inhumanities were done. The facts are clear. Everybody knows the historical facts, what was done to our people. But when you press them, well, if you concede that all of these terrible things were done, all this damage was done, what about, don't you owe compensation? They say, well, unfortunately, back then, slavery was legal. We regret it, but, based on what I've just told you, it was, this notion that slavery was legal is a bogus notion.